about to cap yet another fabulous week of conversations on, yes, the Sportsline Podcast. Really appreciate the excellent feedback and suggestions that you've been sending because, as I always say, it makes this podcast even better. Today on the Sportsline Podcast, we're talking junior hockey, the trade deadline, the Niagara Icedogs, and are you kidding me? The sale of the Brantford Bulldogs. When it pertains to junior hockey, this individual is to be trusted. Dating back to the year 2007, he's been the television voice of the Niagara Icedogs. He's called games for Team Canada on TSN. In addition, remember this? He called games for the AHL's Hamilton Bulldogs. Clark is also the sporting voice of the McMaster Sports and has had many memorable moments on the microphone on the women's and basketball, volleyball teams and what they've done nationally. And of course, I won't dare forget the 3 seasons we shared calling MAC football games on radio. This is always a pleasure for me to have you on the pod. You certainly no stranger. Steve, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Loved that I got the invitation again. It's a great time to talk sports, great time to talk about junior hockey, local sports. Mm-hmm. It seems like it was written in the stars for me to be here today.
It really is. And what the people really need to know is that you and I confirmed a date, and then I'll tell you, but we're going to talk about junior hockey, the trade deadline, and where the Icedogs and where the Bulldogs go. Because what the Icedogs have done this year, I know you kind of said about 6 months ago that this is a team that could do something. Well, they really are doing something special. Eastern Conference first place team, but yet what happened last night, less than 24 hours hours ago, has sort of changed the way we got to talk about this. And of course, we're talking about the sale that needs to be approved by OHL Board of Governors. Of course, that expected to be rubber stamped, of the Brantford Bulldogs. Did this catch you by surprise, Steve?
It did catch me by surprise. I guess I'm not surprised that Michael Andelauer wanted to kind of divest himself of junior hockey because he's running an NHL team and he's running an American Hockey League team. The timing, the moving parts, who it's getting sold to, and everything like that came as a complete surprise, mixed in with them trying to navigate the trade deadline and making a push towards being back into a great position come playoff time. So, yeah, on the whole, I'm surprised about what's transpired over the last 24 hours.
We're being told that Zach Hyman is the purchaser of this team. If you do a little research, the Hyman family have long been involved in junior hockey of all sorts. Yeah. And I'm talking about, the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League, the OJHL, like they're all over the place, all levels of hockey. In fact, Father Stewart has been known as owning at least 90 teams he's had his money in. Apparently, he's a very wealthy Toronto businessman, made millions in real estate over the years. And I read a quote of him from back in 2010 that some people like spending their money on pieces of art. I like spending my money on hockey teams. Not exact quote, but that's where he was going on this. Do we know anything about him? Is this a good thing for the Bulldogs?
Listen, I mean, you pretty well summed up Stuart Hyman when you talked about his biography and how he, rose financially and his influence on hockey. A little bit of a divisive figure, a little bit of a controversial figure, because it was said he was trying to buy influence and, move Zach particularly through the ranks into junior hockey and through into the pros and getting drafted by the NHL. I think we can conclude that Zach Hyman did a lot of things on his own and is an outstanding player. But because I think people have to know that at that point of his career, Zach wasn't a really highly touted individual. No, he was a mid-range draft pick by Florida.
Okay.
And then went the NCAA route and was signed, I believe, as an NCAA free agent by Toronto, and where his stock started to rise. He was a favorite of Mike Babcock. Mike Babcock loved him because of his ability to do those things like retrieve pucks, forecheck, and really free up room for skilled players. So not to get too far away from the topic, but Stuart Hyman, there will be people who will remember the headlines from years back about the controversy, but, Michael Andelauer, I think, is going to do his due diligence in terms of making sure that the junior hockey team that he is selling is in good hands. And Stuart Hyman, for everything you say about him, solid, hockey background, lots of experience. As you said, owned team. I believe he still owns a team in Markham right now in the OGAHL.
It used to be the Hamilton Junior Red Wings.
Absolutely, yep. And I remember when he owned them, Zach played for the Hamilton Junior Red Wings back in the day. So there's that to consider as well. And, and it just creates, though, a number of moving parts.
I guess the obvious question that I have to throw to you is, if I'm a Brantford hockey fan who has been in love with the Bulldogs, and let's be honest too, I think Mr. Andlauer, respectfully so, and rightfully so, at least in my opinion, from what I do know, kind of got the early shove out of First Ontario Centre. In fact, he could have played another year there, right? And they ended up desperately finding a place. He had to sink, $5-7 million into a 50-year-old facility to bring it up to spec, right? So Mr. Andlauer has always been a Hamilton kind of guy and has always said that there will always be hockey here. But he felt slighted. And maybe that also leads to him also saying, time for me to split.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment to make. I mean, his relationship with the city of Hamilton has been, very, very much up and down. And most, to me, of the responsibility lies at the hands of Hamilton City Council, who really didn't recognize what an outstanding, dedicated owner he was when he owned the Hamilton Bulldogs, and all the things he was doing in the city for the kids of Hamilton, and breakfast programs and all those things that junior hockey teams do. And he actually had an idea to build his own arena up and around the Lime Ridge Mall area, I believe was where they were looking. And then that was quickly, shuffled aside by City Council. And eventually they got to the plan of the arena that's going to open, I believe, next year. But then they kicked the Bulldogs out, basically, and as you said, kept it open for a year. So I understand why he's a little bit sour. And I said his responsibility right now is the Ottawa Senators and that franchise.
Okay.
And,
all right. So, sorry, go ahead.
And so I think he needed to move on from junior hockey. Now, again, I said he was probably going to vet the owner, but at the same time, though, he's not going to assume an owner is going to have guarantees that he's going to stay in Brantford, right? And that's not what Brantford hockey fans want to hear. And I know there's lots of talk about a new building in Brantford, but I mean, I've never believed an arena is being built until I see a shovel in the ground, and not one of the ceremonial Doug Ford shovels when he tried to shovel the snow during COVID. An actual shovel in the ground to build the arena.
And you have every reason to believe that, because that's what we're looking at right now. That is a 50-year-old facility. You know all about the Ontario Hockey League. I would believe this is the smallest arena in the league.
Yes, it's actually smaller than Owen Sound, and that's Owen Sound 3,500. This is 3,100.
You can't make money. Like, Mr. Andlauer has a lot of money and could afford, and at least he could house the Bulldogs there. It was a lost leader for him. It was a place to play the team, I think, for the minimum 3 years there. I think if you're a prospective owner of this club, playing in a 50-year-old facility that holds just close to 3,100 people, that's not going to make you money. When you have places like Kitchener, the Rangers, you have the London Knights, who are actually making money out of their facility. And this is, if you're the Hyman group, I guess you're looking at what's going on if this possible arena in Brantford. But I don't know. These, from what I've been told, these are Toronto people, Markham people. Maybe they want to build something bigger outside of Brantford. Should Brantford hockey fans be concerned?
I think they should be concerned, right? Because they were trending towards that new facility. Now you've got a new owner. He's investing his own money into that team, and he can look at whatever he feels is the most financially viable opportunity for him. Hey, I lived this. We lived this with the Niagara Icedogs when the Burks bought the Icedogs and moved them from Mississauga to Niagara. They played at the Jack Gatecliff Arena, 3,100 seats, cramped. You could get no ancillary revenue out of that building, but they bought the Icedogs on the promise of a new arena, which obviously they did. And the Meridian Centre has all the amenities that you want. You've got your private boxes now, those luxury boxes, which are so important. You can't have that really in Brantford as the arena currently exists, even though they have put some work to spruce it up. So, yeah, there's definitely some concern. And it's always a concern when you're they're now relying on, the idea of politicians and working with private investors like the new owner, the Hyman family, of getting a building done. It changes really the narrative in terms of where that building is going to be and whether that new building is going to be built. Sorry, Brantford, but that's a reality.
Well, it is a reality. And OHL Board of Governors are having their meeting, I guess, where this will get passed or adjusted at some point. Yeah. From what I hear, it's going to get rubber stamped. This is just going to get passed through. It'll be the top prospects game, the Connor McDavid top prospects game on Wednesday, where there's expected to be an announcement, a public announcement then. And what a great time, too. We're at this for inaugural top prospects game that's being held in Brantford, sorry. The neat thing to me here is, have Brantford hockey fans done enough if the team were to leave? And again, we're just guessing a lot of things here that we just don't know about, but these are things that are possible. Have Brantford hockey fans proven to the OHL that maybe expansion?
Bluntly, yes. They've really embraced the Bulldogs, sellouts, getting great coverage, through the TV and things like that. So yes, the Brantford fans have done enough, but not long term in that building. There would have to be some promises. And again, this was kind of the idea with the Niagara Icedogs. It's going to be one of those things in which you're in, but if you don't get that new arena built, I'm not sure you could be economically viable for the Ontario Hockey League in a building that was built in 1938 and makes the Brantford Civic Centre look spanking new, brand spanking new, for goodness sake. So, the fans, yes, have done enough to embrace. It's a different demographic in Brantford. There's an increased population now. You would love to have an arena to build in that area, the downtown core, and in that area too. But without a new arena, then I can't see the OHL looking there. And Brian Crawford is on record as saying he wants aggressive expansion, but he's not. He's going to put. Sorry, new commissioner. He's not going to put a team in a city just for the sake of a team in the city. There's got to be some short-term and long-term plans.
And you know this. You've talked to the commissioner.
Yeah, he was on our broadcast last night, and we asked him about expansion and bluntly asked him about the USHL teams, Youngstown and Muskegon, that were rumored to be interested in the Ontario Hockey League. And he gave a pretty down-the-middle answer. But, yeah, he thinks it's time for the Ontario Hockey League to expand, and I tend to agree. I think you don't want to oversaturate a league, but at the same time, though, there's a couple markets out there I think that would be pretty good in the short term and then in the long term, and a couple teams that have been in the league, already. There's a lot of talk and a lot of love for the Cornwall Royals. Now, you can't build a franchise on nostalgia, but if you have the right people in place, then why not go back to where you were?
Steve, great stuff. Fabulous stuff there and fabulous insight in that. Now, let's kind of slide over to where we're going to start this podcast. It's OHL trade deadline, and the Niagara Icedogs are in an interesting situation. I don't know if they're maybe a little ahead of what they expected when head coach Ben Boudreau stepped in there. You've got players like Kevin He making noise, first Asian player to get signed to an NHL contract. Ryan Ruprecht's having a heck of a season. The Meridian Center is rocking. Their first place team, 24-12-3. What do they do at the trade deadline, or are they set?
They did nothing at the trade deadline, and I was literally on my phone and moments till we started this just to see, because the trade deadline was noon, but you see trades trickling in afterwards. The word that I got was that they weren't doing anything. They felt that they had addressed their needs in the off season. They made a couple trades during the season. They just made one, about a month ago to get a young man by the name of Blake Aerosmith from London, who has actually turned into a very, very good young player. Like, he's only 17 years old. So the Icedogs have really now, they've got a good young core. They've got the veterans in place. They've got outstanding goaltending, and they figured they didn't need anybody else. And I'm really, really happy. Number one, it's because, well, you know what the narrative was around the Icedogs. Oh, here comes another Icedogs trade, things like that. But they've really gone with, they've built this team up You asked if they're ahead of schedule. I do believe they're ahead of schedule a little bit, and they're looking to bid for the Memorial Cup in 2 years, but that's down the road, and you have to start looking at what your franchise and team is looking at 2 years down the road. But they're well set up. They're first place in the conference. They're first place in the division. Are they going to stay there? No. Barrie and Oshawa loaded up. Kingston loaded up. The Bulldogs made some moves. It's a very, very competitive conference. Sudbury made some moves. They got the former Brantford Bulldog Noah Roberts this morning. So there's a lot.
Finelli move?
No, he is staying in Ottawa.
Oh, he's staying in Ottawa.
Yeah, they said Ottawa didn't get the offer that they were hoping to get, so they're going to play with him, and he'll stay with the franchise for the rest of the year. It's a very deep Eastern Conference, and Niagara felt, well, we're not going to invest assets in bringing people in for something that's not a certainty or something close to a certainty. They're just going to run with the team that they have.
What has Ben Boudreau done that has separated this team from the pack, and again, been so good? And they were good out of the gate this season. And, there was a little dip. I mean, it wasn't going to go on forever, the undefeated season, but but they've just been steady the whole way through.
Yeah, they have, every time they lose a game, we're like, oh, is this going to be the losing streak? And you're right, it hasn't happened. First of all, he had a full training camp to work with, and he put a lot of good structure in place. Their power play last year was 20th in the Ontario Hockey League. It's 8th right now. Their penalty killing really wasn't much better, and it's not great. It's 14th, but it's still those steady incremental improvements. Coaches, Dan Paillet, right? Local ties, outstanding player in his time, was assistant coaching at the NCAA. Mark Slauson, a name that you won't recognize, but a very, very well-respected coach in minor hockey. Those are the two main guys behind the bench with Ben Boudreau. So he's changed the structure of his coaching staff. He's put in some structure in training camp, and he has that great young core. And he also emphasized defense. He says we need to rebuild the defense and make it tougher, and he did that with 4 or 5 new defensemen.
Okay, so the Ice Dogs are off and running. You have the Brantford Bulldogs, who are in 6th place right now, Jay McKee's club. They've been, I would call them somewhat inconsistent, but you still have some quality players. You've got Nick Lardis, who I think leads the league in goals. You've also got the likes of Jake O'Brien, who is one of the young players, going to be one of I think he's been named the captain.
Yes, he has.
One of the top prospects team, the Eastern Conference for the top prospects game next week. They did make a couple of moves. They got rid of Noah Roberts, overage defenseman, and then they picked up Tommy Budnik. What can he add?
Tommy Budnik is a great veteran defenseman. He has missed some time this year. I believe he started off either in the AHL or ECHL, at least on a roster there. Came back to junior hockey. Guelph came out of the gate very, very slow. So when you have that and you have a Tom Budnik, then they become a potential trade chip. He is somebody, and I know analytics people will roll their eyes at this, on a Guelph team that is struggling towards the bottom of their conference. Budnik was something like a plus 17.
Wow.
And that's not something that's like, oh, it's an overrated statistic. That is something that you look at.
I don't even think he's played 20 games.
A lot of veteran stability. He's scoring a little bit more, and he scores a little bit more than Roberts, who had actually started to improve in that aspect of the game. So when you look at a veteran threesome like Tomasz Hamara, Adam Jirasek, who played at the World Juniors with Czechia, first-round pick of St. Louis, I believe, and then now you add Budnik, that's a good, solid veteran trio of defensemen that the Bulldogs can hang their hat on going forward.
Where's Jay McKee with this club right now? Are they a team that is expected to make? Are they? I mean, again, it's so difficult because now teams are going to be somewhat different with all the loading up or dropping off or selling off players for draft picks in the future. Where are the Bulldogs right now in terms of their what I would call like their competitiveness on the ice going forward?
Well, I mean, yeah, they've underperformed a little bit. Injuries have been a source of concern, but now the one name that we haven't mentioned yet is Marek Van Acker, who's back and he's playing, first-round draft pick. Before the season started, people were talking Oshawa, they were talking Brampton, and then they were talking the Bulldogs and Barrie in the same breath. And it is, Brampton and the Bulldogs are the ones who've fallen off in the standings, but I think they still could be a player. And if you get a Bulldogs team into a 3 seed or even a lower seed in which they don't have home ice advantage, I would not want to face them. I would not want to face a Jay McKee coach team. I think that they can do some damage. Are they as talented as some of the other teams? No, I don't think they are. But I think the moves that they made before the season and at the deadline seem to indicate that, yeah, we do mean business and we do want to be a force come playoff time. And they can now play the rest of the season for seeding and maybe sneak into home ice advantage in the first round. If not, they're still going to be very tough out.
I don't know if it can happen because of the competitiveness of the Bulldogs and the fact that they probably won't drop back, but who knows? Wouldn't it be great to have a Niagara, Brantford, a Bulldogs, Icedogs playoff? Look, I mean, you know this. You have felt the pain.
Yes.
You felt, was it 3 years, 4 years?
No, more, 24 straight times.
How many times?
24 straight times, I believe.
24 straight times the Bulldogs beat the Icedogs.
Yes.
And this pride, what people have to remember too, and those that have been in the area for some time, previous to that, the rivalry was real. Mm-hmm. And then it just went off the rails.
Back in 2018, when the Bulldogs won their first championship in the second round, they faced Niagara. 3 of the games went to overtime. The other 2 one was a 1-goal game, one was a 2-goal game. It was a highly competitive series that the Bulldogs won in 5.
Sorry, the Icedogs had a goaltender. He was unbelievable.
Stephen Dillon.
There you go.
Yeah, Stephen Dillon. And the Bulldogs won in 5. This year, though, this is what I have been waiting for as somebody who follows the OHL, but both of these teams very, very closely, is to have the Bulldogs and the Icedogs on the same plane, in the same stratosphere, very similar in terms of record. And if they meet in the playoffs, going back and forth between the Civic Centre and the Meridian Centre, hook that into my veins for 7 games, for goodness sake. That would be outstanding. Yeah.
Well, let's hope that happens. I think it'd be really good for junior hockey in our area to see those 2 teams battling it out for, a shot at an Ontario Hockey League championship. I do have to throw you this because I know this is something that interests you. I did talk about, your days doing Team Canada stuff, and I know that you're very well connected and very well, just even as a fan, just interested in what happened. Oh, back-to-back 5th place finishes, both losing to Czechia. There's been lots said about this club on a player level, a player selection level, and a coaching level. The difference being in this year is that this team was being hosted, this tournament was being hosted here in Canada, in our nation's capital, and for a lack of a better, fell well short of expectations.
Yeah, and to put it bluntly, the wrong coach and the wrong composition of roster. And then when you started the tournament, some very, very puzzling decisions that were made. And I don't know if it's solely a Dave Cameron decision or not, but I mean, you had Porter Martone, who is going to be 1, 2, or 3 in the NHL draft coming up this year, and you healthy scratched him twice. He's averaging 2 points a game in the Ontario Hockey League. Carson Rakoff, who is his line mate, they don't put them together. So, I mean, obviously a lot of the things I'm going to say from an OHL perspective, because I'm not as familiar with the WHL and QMJHL.
But this was a real OHL heavy team.
It was a very, and losing Matthew Schaefer early in the tournament did not help. But at the same time, though, if you're constructing Team Canada, you have the depth to overcome those things, or at least you should. The team, after Finland, they never looked right. I mean, obviously the Kazakhstan or Latvia game is obvious. And then, Germany game was a struggle. The penalties in the U.S. game were an absolute disaster. And then, I mean, yes, they came back against Czechia and lost in a heartbreaker, but they played a first period that's unforgivable in a short tournament at an elimination game when they were down, 2-0, I think, 2-1, 3-1 at the end of one period, giving up that late goal. It just went wrong from the start. They weren't practicing.
I was going to bring this up.
It's baffling.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because as you dig more and more, and what we do in terms, you dig more, you listen to the experts, you try to make your own opinion. But that was one of the things that I thought was alarming, is that after losses to the United States, which is the big rivalry game, that Dave Cameron gave them the day off. This is a short tournament.
Yeah.
How can these players get like multiple days off?
Yeah, it was, to not be on the ice and just basically be there to play the games was a very, very, well, I could say puzzling, I could say baffling, or I could just say flat out lousy decision. And the reasoning was even worse when he said, tired team. Well, you know what? Short tournament. These are young guys, right? You don't get tired when you're this age and you're that deep. And I just thought it was a terrible decision. And I wasn't impressed with Dave Cameron as well in some of the comments that he made. He was a little bit flippant. He said, well, the discipline, they got to work it out themselves. And, well, you're the coach. You can bench guys. I mean, Easton Cowan, for everything good that he has done with the London Knights this year, did not have a great tournament, and he admitted that himself. It was almost like he was waiting or expecting to be benched, but he wasn't. And yeah, it was just one of that tournament.
Guy, he didn't seem to get a lot of time.
No, and again when. Canada picked up a 5-minute major in that game against Czechia,
yes,
and they put McKenna in the penalty box for the 5 minutes. Maybe he's not a great penalty killer, but at the same time, though, I don't think you want to make that example, because sometimes you do choose specific guys for a specific reason to go sit and serve a penalty for somebody, and it's not a reward.
No, it's an interesting message. I'll finish up on this in terms of the World Juniors. The United States of America have won this tournament I have to go back and check. They've won this 4 times, 4 gold medals, I believe, in the last 8 years.
Yep.
This is the United States of America. I know that even Canada, in other sports, have caught up to many of the powers in the world. So I think we have to look at it on a global basis. But in terms of hockey, we've always thought that Canada will dominate. Canada is not a dominant force at this tournament anymore. And I say no, it's a short tournament, and there was arguments that said, if Bedard was there and Celebrini was there, that Canada would clean up or whatever. But it is what it is.
Yes.
But boy, United States, they've turned things down in 2 decades. They've really turned around their programs, and at the high level and even at the junior level.
They did what Canada didn't do. Their philosophy was, we're going to take the most skilled, high-end players that we can, and then we'll work with them at the tournament and let them flourish, and then we'll develop our system based on their skills. Canada was trying to establish their game plan and then try to fit athletes who weren't used to doing some of the things into that, rather than bringing the highly skilled players. We had Michael Misa in town last night against Niagara, and even though Saginaw got drilled 7-2 by Niagara, the high-end skill of Michael Misa and how he commands the ice, and Zane Parekh, these guys who were left behind, you could you could pretty well have a better Canadian team based on the players who weren't taken, but rather than the players that were taken. So U.S., we're taking the most, and they're hosting it next year. So that they're going to want to put on the best show ever and go. And that's all you're going to hear. That's all you're going to hear. You're going to hear three-peat. And now Canada is now just one of the teams. Really, 2 fifth straight finishes.
Wow. They've
got a lot to prove.
Yep.
And they better get the coach right. And I would pick Gardner McDougall. I think that's his name. He's the guy who was coaching New Brunswick, and they ran off 90 wins in a row and 4 championships, and now he's coaching in the Q. I'd bring him in. May as well bring a proven winner in.
Well, yeah, I think, yes, a fresh face, I think, is certainly, I think, what Hockey Canada have to certainly look at. The craziest thing to me is, like you said, they are hosting this United States team. Their program is certainly growing. NCAA hockey seems to be growing. even the television coverage of this United States, I mean, the States love winners, right?
Absolutely.
Right? They're getting even more play. I couldn't believe how much coverage they were getting on ESPN. And I know the NHL Network as well, too, were covering their games. So yeah, they're certainly doing something really, really special over there. And boy, it's just, it seems weird to talk about Canada in a negative light like we have for the last couple of years. But boy, there's some sock pulling that needs to happen for Hockey Canada.
I think so. And they really are going to have to step back and take a look at the decisions that they made, what they really, what their ride or die decisions were, and say, why did we make those decisions? Why did they not work out? And, do we need to be a little bit more flexible and open-ended in terms of how we build the team and how we build the coaching staff and things like that? And I'll be honest with you, I do think that, even though I said that Canada's just one team now with 2 fifth-straight finishes in a row, they will fix it. They will correct it, and they will likely be a force next year. But at this point, though, they kind of have to prove it, though, right? You have to prove it with, the roster. The only good thing was goaltending was great. Carter George.
Oh, he was good.
Became a star. Jack Ivankovic, 2 OHL goaltenders as well. There was no problem with goaltending, so that's a good thing.
Leave you on this here. Unfortunately, your Miami Dolphins did not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that, Bubba. I thought I was here to talk junior hockey, Team Canada, and here you are sneaking in hurtful things.
Just wanted to talk about the Fish a little bit, right? Like just a little bit. Do you like where's his team right now? Hill wants to leave. It sounds like what's going on here? I mean, Tua, when healthy, seems to be a pretty good quarterback.
They're a team in flux right now, and I'm not going to say chaos, but they've got decisions to make. Their defense was great this year, even though their best pass rusher is 38 years old in Calais Campbell. The offense was, you're right, it went south after Tua went out, and Tyreek Hill. Let's just say I have a lot of time. I love Tyreek Hill as a player. I even loved him when he played for KC.
He's dangerous.
I was not impressed with how he closed out the season and then popped off a little bit and said that the team wasn't competitive. It wasn't the time for that. I understand his frustration. I don't think it was the time for that. Do they move on from Tyreek? Who knows? Maybe a little bit of time and separation will calm things down. But at the same time, though, he is a slightly diminishing asset in that he is getting a little bit older. You know who he kind of reminds me of? It's just skill set, not the way Brandon Banks. Brandon Banks had all that speed. He was an exciting player, did a lot of things, returned punts and things like that. And even though when he got a little bit older, he was still a very, very effective receiver who adjusted his game and ran routes a lot better and things like that. That could be Tyreek Hill. But I would start building the team around Jalen Waddle if they want to keep him.
I've got to ask you this too. Final question. Sorry, I got to extend this here. What's going on at Mac?
I've removed myself a little bit from McMaster just because of time considerations with my daughter's hockey. Actually came from her game this morning in Mississauga back here.
She's a highly touted goaltender.
I like to think so. I like to think so. So she's playing at 5:00 against the Honey Baked program from Michigan. So we look forward to that. So I am in tune a little bit with the football team. There's 2 things to look at. New defensive coordinator, that needed to happen because, all the great things that Scott Brady did, teams ran all over McMaster last year. They ran in the playoff game, all Western did was they ran the football, flip a few passes here and there, and Mac was done. So that's going to be something to look forward to. 2, Keegan Hall could graduate academically. My sense is, and I can't confirm this either way, is that he's leaning towards returning for another year, which is fantastic. And the third thing, and this is just something to take a victory lap, is that Demetrius Masuka, who's a defensive back from McMaster, got invited to I can't remember exactly what it's called, but a prospects game in Texas. So he's going to be participating there, and Taylor Algusma from Laurier is amongst those who are there. So basketball and volleyball, all I've been following is casually, and the men's basketball, I was stunned to see they're 1-11 this year.
They're struggling.
struggling, and they're not getting blown out. Games are close. I'm looking at the roster, and there's some talented people on the roster, but for whatever reason, it's not falling into place for Pat Tatum's team. And Pat Tatum all of a sudden didn't forget to coach. Like
Exactly.
he's a great. I mean, I know you've had him on here. He's an outstanding human being and an outstanding coach. It just might be one of those years. Women's basketball pretty consistent. Volleyball teams are still, they've managed to turn the page on legendary coaches and have done quite well.
It's amazing how they do it.
That program just keeps on rolling along. I miss calling basketball games and volleyball games at McMaster. I loved calling the football games this year. So I've missed the basketball and the volleyball. But as you know, Max, still near and dear to my heart.
Right on. No, it's be true to your school, right?
That's right.
Hey, be true to you. You're awesome. Thank you so much for participating here. And again, we had planned to just talk about the OHL teams in our area on where they're going from now, but you were just fantastic on the sale of the Bulldogs. And I guess it's a stay tuned situation for all of us.
Yeah, I'm just one more thought. I'm of two minds that this is happening now. I mean, obviously, you're going to get a lot of attention with the Prospects game coming up in Brantford, but this is the first time this Prospects game has run. There are draft eligibles. There are also overage players who are looking to get a contract and looking to get notice. And I just hope that the focus does remain on the game and the players and not solely on the off-ice stuff.
Our guy Reed Duffy just heard you. Islikar, Miller, all you guys.
Oh yeah, they know what's going on.
They know what's going on exactly. Yeah. A good little local note there. Thanks again for joining us, partner.
Happy to do it.
All right, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And if you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports, talking junior hockey. I love it. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline podcast do want to hear from you. Hit that. In fact, smash that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, we appreciate your comments. For the outstanding people that do make the Sportsline podcast possible, thank you so very much, and we'll see you next week.